I see that you have programs geared toward gravity racers, but as a top national level masters downhill and enduro racer, I still struggle. Pretty sweet. That means he's really fast. I still struggle to believe that using a stationary bike for training and monitoring only my pedaling power, seated with a stationary upper body, is relevant for the type of racing that I do. I do want to follow a more structured power-based program for next season, so I've been considering using either a rowing machine or an assault bike like an Aerodyne. And Chad, can you explain kind of what those are? And Tucker will put in a picture in the forums, then people can see it.
I think Schwinn made them originally, the Aerodynes. So. But they have those big caged fans on the front, and then the two arms that are kind of bullhorn shaped, and they oppose your pedal stroke. So as you're pushing down on one side, they oppose? Yeah, they oppose. Yep. So basically you're revving your arms to the same time. It's all linked together. In fact, it's all linked together. It's all linked to that fan. So both your legs and your arms are driving the flywheel.
We had one as a kid, and it made a great clothes hanger. You could put 5, 6 shirts up there.
I think we had one.
Along with a Nordic track. Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, there's the possibility of some upper body conditioning. There absolutely is possibility. And I don't know how you could avoid it, especially if you go full gas like they do in the CrossFit setting.
Yeah, if you want to see them, look up CrossFit videos, and you'll see people doing
they hit it hard. It's usually like a calorie requirement or something. 20 calories on the Aerodyne, then move on to whatever's next.
Which would be like kilojoules.
Yeah.
And you drill it.
Yeah. It's popular in CrossFit right now.
Yeah. Oh, totally. So he says he's been considering using one of those or a rowing machine for my FTP test and subsequent training, since the core and upper body strength required to make power in those machines, the twisting and hinging that you do, more closely matches the muscle requirements of my events. So this is all like a string of logic, right? Like I can see how you would arrive to these conclusions.
I do too, absolutely.
It says, recently, Jonathan did mention that in his last Enduro race, he spent the majority of his time coasting in a few of the stages. Obviously not enough, because Richie Root, as we found out in that whole video series, did a whole lot more coasting and just destroyed my times. So yeah, maybe I should have spent more time coasting. He says that even though I did that, my heart rate was still very high. My intuition tells me that there is still a fairly large power requirement from bodies in these events, even though we are not pedaling, and I do routinely hit my max heart rate in every enduro stage and downhill race that I compete in. So does following an approach like this make sense, or would the stationary bike still condition the cardiovascular system equally? If this is true, would I just need to focus on strength requirements from my events separately with additional core and upper body work? Cheers and thanks in advance. Podcast is great, and I'm optimistic that the training program will be too. Cool. I think it's probably important for us to point out the fact that we do not have any specific research on this this scenario, right?
No, how Aerodyne carries over to enduro riding.
I don't know of any. I searched the web and I came up with nothing. That said, I think that what we can do is look at what the world's best enduro and downhill trainers do in this case. And what they do is they keep them separate. Now, you'll also see that in the off season, for example, Richie Rood or Aaron Gwynn or top athletes like that. I think they work with a guy named Perform MX Training, I believe is the name of the system. Great guy, seems to really know what he's talking about. In the off season, you'll see them doing a whole lot of different things. So you'll see videos of them, I'm sure, on an assault bike, something like that. But when it comes into actually training for the season and when things get more specific, but really their whole entire season once they get out of the off season, they keep it separate. They train on the bike. Richie Root actually said when he was in here, he loves road riding and he does a lot of road riding, and he does that so then it's just way easier for him to train with a road bike, that sort of a thing. And then they do a lot of stuff in the gym. So it's like separated. And the goal behind that separation is to specialize highly in each one, get the most out of each of those things, and then that basically builds a better product in the end in terms of a fitter athlete. That's the logic behind that. It's not to say that it wouldn't benefit you, though. I mean, if you spent time on an assault bike, you'd still be, building fitness.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. I actually want to make a point.
Sure.
Having to do with that very thing, but I do want to just jump back here for a second. And he said he's concerned about his heart rate being high. So first off, on race day, heart rate has no place. Just dismiss it. It's only going to psych you out. There's no real benefit in watching your heart rate on heart day. Pay attention to how you feel and how you're performing, especially considering you're in a race scenario, which heart rate is going to elevate your sympathetic response. Could be at altitude. You are doing some work. What about the heat? I mean, all these things can have an influence on heart rate. So don't give heart rate too much concern.
Scared out of your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Downhill race.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Scary stuff.
Fear
goes
way
adrenaline.
up.
Yep.
Well, and you'll see, like, in those sort of moments too, if you have a really scary moment, your heart rate isn't going to really come down a whole lot. And so there are other things other than just pure performance that are driving that, I guess, is what we're getting at with
potentially,
that.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, Chad, what do you have to add on this one?
So the conditioning, I understand why he would want to have a greater level of aerobic conditioning in his upper body. It does make sense, but the specificity doesn't work for me because it doesn't carry at all. You have two independently moving arms, whereas with handlebars, everything kind of moves in unison. So right there, that's a different muscular demand. You're not pulling the bars so much as hanging onto the bars and stabilizing your body. So it's not quite the same thing. The only case I can see for introducing aerobic capacity sort of training for the upper body is just to process more lactate in the moment. So if you've got this lactate being shuttled out of the cells into the bloodstream, it can actually get picked up and utilized by other muscles. So you could clear lactate a little faster, which, and the blood acidification goes along with it, et cetera. But that assumes the muscles that the lactate is effectively, cruising by are exerting the demand. They have to need that lactate to be able to utilize it. So this isn't, I just don't see the muscles working hard enough that they would actually pick up that lactate. They're not going to be, these are more isometric contractions. It's not like this bout of concentric repeats like we see with the lower body.
Trace said too about rowing. What do you think about that?
That's more akin to it. I think if you're going to overlap it with anything, I would scrap the airdyne and stick to the rower because those joint actions are very similar. I mean, in that case, the legs are moving at the same time, but you're able to address the legs on the bike. The rowing is very much in line with the muscular and metabolic demands of downhilling.
Rip row.
There we are. Yeah,
right.
Oh, absolutely.
That's right.
That's
in
about
there.
as specific as it gets.
And that can get you.
You can even have
super
your legs
tiring.
staggered.
Burning, yeah.
Another thing that you'll see people use is the ski erg, where they're basically like rowing straight downward. You'll see a lot of people doing
and that's
that.
just, that's a lot of muscle mass working, and that's going to be a big demand on the aerobic system. Huge oxygen uptake. This is why we see in pro-level alpine skiers that they post the highest VO2 maxes. That's because they're using a lot of muscle mass. If these same athletes were sat on a bike and all they were doing was utilizing their legs, we'd probably see VO2 maxes similar to that we see in the top level, cyclists.
If Trace wanted to do this and he's looking at getting an assault bike or a rowing machine, personally, I would get the Rip Row because that's going to be like a rowing machine but built around exactly how your bike
specific.
is. And you can even get the handlebar width exactly the same.
Honestly, as far as a piece of equipment that's about as specific to the sport's demands as you can get,
that's it.
It'd be the Rip Row,
Yeah. And I think that you look at this keeping things separate, and it makes a lot of sense. And it allows them to really become efficient at different things.
And that's another point I wanted to make is something like this. You can experiment as much as you want to in the earlier phases of training before things get really specific, and you're just trying to improve the level of oxygen you can push through your body, and you want to incorporate the airdyne into your workouts. Why not use it in the base training? It doesn't even have to be considered cross training so much as just another stimulus to incorporate along with what you're doing on the bike already.
Yeah, and where I guess I'll get with like the point of keeping them separate. Let's say you don't keep them separate, and let's say that we don't know this, but let's just assume that you have a potential to raise your FTP to 300, right? If you trained really well on the bike all the way through the year, but because you're instead spending all the time on the airdyne, you only get yourself up to like 250, 260 because of the fact that you're always exerting more demand on your system. Wouldn't it be better to push that needle higher on one side and then to work on the strength demands with specificity that you would have?
Probably.
And I think that's why the top pros do it in the way that they do. It's a better way to get more out of the athlete, basically. Despite it's a very logical way to think about it, though. I can totally see why you would think of it this way.
Yeah, I like the lines along which he's thinking for sure.
If you like this video, you should subscribe to our channel. Maybe even give this video a like with a thumbs up and a comment down below.
If you want to see race analysis videos, you can click on it right over here. And if you want to get your coaching questions answered, you can click on it right over here.
And if you want to become a faster cyclist, which you should go over to TrainerRoad.com. It'll make you faster. We promise. We guarantee it, right, Nate?
Guaranteed. Or your money back.
Yes, it's true, actually. We really will do that.
Yeah.